In Clemson football history, who are the greatest, the best, the program changing hires? Who are they? Where are they? We're going to talk about that today. I am so excited to jump in and talk about the best hires in Clemson football history. Folks, I'm dying for some Clemson football. I'm like over here about to break out. I need my Clemson football. I need my college football to kick off. I need college football. Right now, I would settle for watching New Mexico play UMass. It's that bad. I need it that bad. Welcome to Clemson Football Live. I am Brian. If you like what I'm doing, I hope you'll subscribe. It's easy and it's free, and pass it along if you don't mind to your friends, neighbors, clergymen. If you're new here, welcome, friends. So yesterday, I produced a video called The Worst Coaches in Clemson History. I went over those coaches, and the vast majority of them are assistant coaches. I talked about that. And then someone made a comment on the video and said, hey, I would like to hear your best coaches. So I'm going to start off by saying this. First off, especially if you're older than me, you're going to remember some coaches that were alive and well when, I wasn't even a thought in my mom and dad's mind. So leave those coaches' names in the chat or the comment section. And there's a chance that I forgot someone. Now, if you go on right now and you type in best assistant coaches in Clemson history or recently in Clemson, you're going to see names like Nick Eason. Nick Eason's been with the program. He's a former Clemson player. He left. He's traveled. He come back. Nick Eason seems to be doing a great job. I didn't include him on this list, not because I don't think he's worth it. He's just been at Clemson for a short amount of time as a coach, okay? Wes Goodwin. Some people are saying Wes Goodwin already, all right? He's been at Clemson for a little bit, but and Mike Reed, you'll see names like Mike Reed and a few others, okay? So today I'm going to talk about some downright obvious coaching hires, and it's a mix between head coaches and assistant coaches, okay? So I want to go ahead and let you know I probably forgot someone. Please don't stone me, though you will. But let's dive right in. I'm going to get two of these out of the way. They're not honorable mentions, meaning that they are not worthwhile. In fact, when I mention both of these, you could easily say they're at the top. But these two names, they are so far removed from recent Clemson football history that I'm just going to go ahead and mention them at the beginning, okay? First off, the one, the only, and if my memory serves me correct, still the highest winning percentage ever at Clemson, John Heisman. Now, a lot of people who are not Clemson fans have absolutely no clue that John Heisman coached at Clemson. If my memory serves me correct, he coached at Clemson for 3 years. He gave Clemson their first undefeated season. He also gave Clemson their first conference title. So John Heisman is not an honorable mention like he wasn't close to making the cut. No, in fact, John Heisman is John Heisman. I'll leave that there. But a lot of people don't know, unless they're Clemson fans and they pay attention, they don't know that the great John Heisman, the Heisman Trophy, coached at Clemson for 3 years. The next one up, my Lord, all I have to do is flash this picture. You know exactly what it is. And when I saw this picture, I said, I have to put this on the video because this is just so epic. It's just so vintage. I love it. It's got that Lombardi look. It just Frank Howard. I mean, good grief. Doesn't he just have that epic look there? He's got the hat. He's got the tie. You know, he's probably, I don't know if the man smoked. He probably did. Everybody smoked then. They thought it was good for you. I'll guarantee he was probably smoking on the sideline. I don't know. Frank Howard, his name is everywhere at Clemson. Coached at Clemson forever. We have Howard's Rock. Everything in Clemson is tied to Frank Howard. And after Frank Howard left, we know that there was coaches after him that didn't do so well. And you didn't start winning again until Charlie Pell, who was there for only a couple of years. I didn't put Charlie Pell on the list. He was only at Clemson for a couple of years, but he did get Clemson back to playing competitive football, got them to the Gator Bowl. So I'm not knocking Coach Pell. Appreciate what he did. But after Frank Howard left, there was some real uncertainty with the Clemson football program. You had this man coaching your team for a very long time. Everybody knew that this man was going to bring it, and good grief, he did. So those are the honorable mentions, though they're not honorable mentions. They are staples in Clemson football history. But my main goal is to get into more recent coaches that has really made a difference in the recent Clemson football years. So if you're like, oh, you missed so-and-so from 1974, just bear with me. I just laid that out there. So who is my most recent coach? My most recent coach that was a really good hire for Clemson. This guy, Chad Morris. Now, if you're a pessimist like I am, I don't like to say I'm a pessimist. I like to say I'm a realist. It just comes off negative if the truth is negative. You'll say, Chad didn't do so well at Arkansas. Folks, who exactly does well at Arkansas? Bobby Petrino. Hey, he did it there for a little while. Anyway, Chad Morris, I remember when they hired him. They had went through offensive coordinators. I talked about yesterday that Billy Napier was an offensive coordinator for a few years at Clemson. They had to fire him. Rob Spence was before him, a guy who had 1,500 plays, and, every play looked alike. So it's like, really, did he have 1,500 plays? You had other guys who came in, and they just didn't do a solid job. But I'll never forget when Chad Morris was hired. He was hired, I want to say, out of Tulsa. And this guy came in, and the offense looked different. It did not look like the same old Clemson offense. We didn't want the same old Clemson offense. This guy provided the change, and he was part of the change. Now, you saw him with Taj Boyd. You saw him do some great things there. You saw him with those. He had some great wide receivers. Sammy Watkins. He had Nuke Hopkins. And you will still hear people be critical of Chad Morris. I've been critical of him at times in certain games. It was kind of like he was slightly outcoached here or there. But this man was part of the change, the good change. And so he was one of the best hires that Sweeney brought in. When you hear me praise Sweeney or criticize Sweeney for past hires, I talk about Sweeney or current hires. Sweeney went out and he got guys like Chad Morris, who at the time, folks, for some of you younglings in here who are, you're a freshman at Clemson, or maybe you're 17, 18 years old. Maybe you've been at Clemson for the past 4 years. You don't realize how big of a deal it was to get Chad Morris in and change the offense, and this was definitely a great move by him. This was just a wonderful, wonderful hire, and it was what Clemson needed at the time. So, starting off with the Clemson assistants, Chad Morris definitely in there. Now, the next guy is not one guy. This is number 4. Best coaching hires in recent Clemson history. Okay? In recent Clemson history, it's not one guy, it's 2 guys. Now, there are some amazing duos, whether it's musical or whether it's playing on a sports team. We saw with the Chicago Bulls, you had Jordan and Pippen, okay? You had stuff like that going on. You had Sonny and Cher, really before my time. Ike and Tina, I really shouldn't say that one, but they're memorable. These two, when they were together, won 2 national championships. When they were apart, one took a head coaching job, did not do well. It kind of shocked me. But then you got to think of where they were coaching. The other one is now a head coach, not doing well. But when you put these two together, they were unbelievable. They gave us 2 national championships, Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott. Now, when I think of 2016 and 2018, those are the heydays of Clemson football. We know that now. Even then, we knew that we were in the good old days of Clemson football. It was just the present day at that time. Those two guys were up to their elbows from the feet up in the reason of being why Clemson was successful. And so Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott working together, co-offensive coordinators, I mean, they were quite the pair. And Sweeney gave them a chance, but let's be honest with ourselves. Jeff had coached before. Jeff used to be a high school coach at Blythewood. Tony had been coaching at Clemson. And Tony may have never called a play at Clemson, but Tony had been coaching at Clemson, and he had been around people like Chad Morris, and he had been around others who could guide him and direct him. So these two guys were not two guys that just showed up one day that had played football for Clemson, and they just started coaching, and they were luckily successful. Now, these guys had been in the program. They'd been around some bright minds, and they did very well. And so the fourth best coaching hires, and that is Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott together. They were quite a pair, 2 national championships. You can't argue with that, okay? You can't argue with that. And I think that they probably, where one had a weakness, the other one stepped in. And I mean, 2 national championships. What more do you have to say about that? My third best hire actually came on the heels of a blowout to West Virginia. Now, the guy he replaced is who I led off with yesterday. He replaced Kevin Steele after a 70-33 loss in the Orange Bowl. The first Orange Bowl that we had been to since 1981. And I'll never forget hearing this guy's name and asking myself, I really don't know who this guy is, but he's at Oklahoma. He's out there in Stoops land. There's a Stoops, everywhere. And they hired him. And I'm going to tell you, folks, I'm going to offend some here. You're going to call me crazy, and that's fine. It won't be the first time I'm called crazy. It won't be the first time I offend someone. Brent Venables could easily be number 2. And in some cases, Brent Venables could possibly be argued to be code number 1 for the reason that Clemson had success and won the national championship twice in a 3-year period. Okay? This guy came in, he wreaked havoc on everybody he coached against. If he was coaching against you, you had to worry about this guy. You knew that he was going to coach you. He was going to coach up. He was going after you. The only time that you ever saw a problem with Brent Venables, and this is especially in the last few years that he was at Clemson, is when the offense basically became suspect. When the offense, and that offense, they had Trevor, they had Travis Etienne, and you say, what are you talking about? Remember the Ohio State game, his very last game? He coached in, if my memory serves me correct. I could be wrong. Clemson's offense just basically died. But this guy right here is responsible for bringing the viciousness to Clemson. You played against Clemson, you paid. End of story. And Brent Venables, to me, is just one of the best hires ever in Clemson football. I hate putting him at number 3 right now. When you see who's 2-1 in front of him, you're going to say, well, duh, I get it. But this guy was, I mean, wow. That's all I got to say is, wow. Now, as I said, guys like Nick Eason, guys like Wes Goodwin, it's going to take them some time to end up on this list. I saw that in the comment section, and starting off the show, I said, hey, there's some guys that I am not mentioning. A lot of people talks about other coaches that are in recently, or maybe moved on to Oklahoma with Brent Venables. I'm not trying to take away from them, but these guys, there was a major turning point when they were at Clemson. I'm talking about championship turning point. Now, everybody that I've mentioned up to this point, except for John Heisman and Frank Howard at the very beginning, has been from recent years, over the past 10 years or so. My show, I can break the rules. Number 2, he gave us our very first national championship. He's a redneck of all rednecks. He's a cow farmer. I'm still old enough to remember him being there. Danny Ford. Just look at that guy. He's got bacca in his mouth. He's ready to spit it. He's probably in his mind asking himself, probably has a bracelet. Instead of WWJD, it's WWBD. What would Bear do? I'm not being sacrilegious, folks. I'm a believer. I'm not being sacrilegious. But could you imagine that? Danny Ford did not, in his first year, didn't do so well. If my memory, all of this is by memory, I want to say the year before that, they lost to Baylor in a bowl game. They had a losing record. Something like that. And then this guy comes in, and he takes a team who doesn't supposed to be there. The idea of them beating Nebraska in the national championship was not supposed to happen, folks. Now, even though Nebraska was out there in the middle of the cornfields, it wasn't like they were Southern California. It wasn't like they were Ohio State. It wasn't like they were the notoriously college football elite of Notre Dame. But Nebraska had made a name for itself. And oddly enough, Nebraska would not win their first national championship until the 90s. Clemson would actually beat them to it by winning this in 1981. He's the man who did it. He was a young guy then. He wasn't some old dude. Danny Ford lives in infamy. Danny Ford was the bridge between, when he left, was the bridge between old and new school. When Danny Ford left, we did not have anything to look forward to for quite a while. But Ford is synonymous with success, with tradition, and he gave us our first national championship, even when other great coaches before him couldn't, or good coaches couldn't. Coaches who you would think that they would do it. Nope. And you could say that Danny Ford had some foundation laid for him, and you know what? We never want to take away from that. But I want to tell you this once again. Remember, the drum I beat all the time is what? What? You know what I'm about to say if you watch me all the time. Coaching matters. A coach can mess it up. Remember Ron Zook taking over Urban Meyer's Florida team? You remember that? Was it Ron Zook that took over for Urban Meyer? No, Ron Zook took over for Steve Spurrier, right? Either way, he took over a successful football. No, it was Ron Zook who took over for Steve Spurrier. You saw what happened there. Urban Meyer comes in, does great. Who takes over for Urban Meyer? Will Muschamp. What happened? Disaster. So my point is, whether you agree with me or not, that's fine. You can keep believing a lie. But history has proven at Clemson and at other programs, coaching matters. Danny Ford might very well have had the foundation laid, but my Lord, he went out there and he harvested the field. He didn't flood it. He didn't kill it. And in fact, until this next guy, he was the greatest success that we ever had. How he went out was ridiculous. I'm just gonna leave that alone. But he was later cleared for the NCAA violations and this, that, and the other. Newsflash: everybody was doing it. I know that's not okay, but I just think that he had ticked off a bunch of people in the administration, from what I can remember. But that's neither here nor there. That still doesn't change that we're talking about Danny Ford, just a legend. I mean, good grief. I'm telling you, that picture right there is just legendary. This next guy is number one, and you know exactly who it is, but he was not only hired once, he was hired twice. You're like, what? He was hired once by the guy he ended up replacing. That was a very good move. He went in and he was a wide receivers coach at Clemson. His former Alabama walk-on, who Gene Stallings basically called him up and told him, from the stories from what I understand is correct, hey son, you're going to come coach for me. And he did, because everybody's scared of Gene Stallings. He went and he coached at Clemson under Tommy Bowden. And he was someone who just made an impression on them. So Tommy Bowden made the first good hire. And then Terry Don Phillips turned around after showing Tommy, hey, look, we've given you every resource in the world. We're going to have a championship. And statistically, it was out of the question. So Coach Bowden knew what was going on there, and they parted ways. And then this guy, for the second time, was the best hire at Clemson. He won 2 national championships in 16 and 18, 6 consecutive playoff wins, and six consecutive playoff appearances and 12 consecutive 10-win seasons. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I picked this picture on purpose because it's young. It's the young version of him. He's fired up, and I like it. Yes, Dabo Swinney. I like that. I like that fired up nature right there. I really like that. You mean you like that aggressiveness? Yep, I do. He's a man. Coaching a bunch of brutes who are beating up. Lift weights just to beat up on each other. Yes, I like that. Dabo Swinney is the best hire that Clemson has ever had. You know it. I know it. The guy, his record speaks for itself. Even the recent criticism that he's received from others as well as me stems from he's been so doggone successful, and when it doesn't look like what he's done, you know, you're sitting there questioning things because he did that good of a job, great of a job. So Dabo Swinney is the best all-time hire at Clemson. He's the best all-time hire at Clemson University, period. There's been a lot of coaches there come and go, good coaches in different sports and so on. None has compared to Dabo Swinney and what he's done for the program, the excitement and the competitive edge that they've had over the years. And when you are able, when you're able to go into the state of Georgia with a successful Alabama team right there at you, and a successful Florida State team at the time, you know, pre-craziness that went on with them until these recent years, and you have, you got to think at the time, there was other SEC schools that were having success, and you go and you get Trevor Lawrence and you get Deshaun Watson and you get them to come to Clemson. That is a big, big deal. And he cashed in. He did a great job. And so he is the best coach, coaching hire in the history of Clemson. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining me. I do want to let you know before I go, I have a new video that's going to be coming out. This is one of those pre-recorded. I spent a lot of time editing it, and it only ends up being about 6 or 7 minutes long. But the video is focusing on Phil Maffa, and I simply asked the question, plainly put, is he the difference between success or failure? You know, I'm a big Phil Maffa fan. The guy is he's the type of back who can throw a team on his back, and you can, pun intended, feel the difference. You saw what he did against Notre Dame. You saw what he did in the last games of 2023, a season that just seemingly had no end of disaster. And a lot of that dealt with Phil Maffa stepping in. Now the show is his. I'm going to talk about him there. Again, if you enjoy what I'm doing, I hope you'll subscribe. I hope you'll pass it along to anyone who likes Clemson football or just college football, because I do talk about other teams, because, hey, Clemson has to play other teams, and what happens in college football, it affects Clemson, like it or not. So, folks, leave a comment in the comment section below. Tell me where I'm right. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me who I forgot, who I didn't mention. Even if you want to throw in one of those coaches from 1918, throw it in there. Let me know what you think. It's always good to hear from you. As always, go Tigers.